Welcome. Okay, so we're going to do solving quadratics by factoring. This actually is going to be a two-part one. So today I'm just doing some simple, easy factoring stuff. And then we'll look at, say, some more difficult ones like in another set of notes later. Our idea here is that we want to use the factoring method to solve quadratic equations. And your big question for this one is, can you describe the steps in solving? Because the better you can describe this, the better you'll understand it. Okay? So let's look at a review on this real quick. So I'm going to put up a problem and kind of remind you of something. We used to have problems that said something like x plus 3 times x minus 7 that you would multiply. And again, I'm showing you my old school method, the vertical method, which was 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. 3 times x was 3x. Put a 0. X times negative 7 was negative 7x. And x times x is x squared. Combine, you get x squared minus 4x minus 21, and that would have been your final answer. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this and go back to the parentheses. And then we're going to see how we can use that to also solve a quadratic. Okay? So, one thing I do need you to put down is, again, notice most of these are going to be trinomials. Now, what I mean by trinomials, you're going to have an x squared, an x, and then a number. In the trinomial, if you have plus plus, in parentheses you're going to have plus plus, minus plus, minus minus, plus minus, plus minus, minus minus, plus minus. You'll see what this means in a minute, but you want to know this chart. Okay? Now, this is the way I do things. I'm going to show you another way that another teacher just showed me. I'm not as comfortable with it, so as I get more comfortable, I will show you more about it if you want to see it. But I think the way I show y'all is also pretty easy, so y'all can kind of let me know. Okay, so the idea here, and let's look at a problem. Okay, so here's a problem. X squared plus x minus 12 is equal to 0. Okay, how do I start off this problem? Okay, now notice here we've got the plus and the minus. Okay, so that means in the parentheses, I'm telling you to put plus and minus. Now notice here that I put x in both of these because x squared, I'm splitting the x's up. Okay. This x in the middle we got from combining, adding two x's. Okay, so don't worry about that. What we're worrying about here is splitting the first term, x and x in each parentheses. Then you take the 12, and you want to find all the factors of 12. You can always say 1 in that number, so 1 in 12. Okay, there's 2 go into 12, so divide. What I do is I divide, and I start off start at 1, go 2, go 3, go 4, go 5, until you start repeating numbers. And then you know you've covered all what are called your factors of that number, all the pairs that would multiply to give you that number. So 2 goes into 12 6 times, so 2 times 6 is 12, we know that. 3 goes into 12 4 times, then your next number after 3 would be 4, which is a repeat. So you now have covered all your factors of 12. Now if you go back at that little table you made, a plus minus means you need to subtract. So you need to subtract these pairs to see which one would give you an answer of 1. Because you're basing this on that we multiply to get these numbers, but we add or subtract to get this one. Okay, and you've seen that through your old school. Look at that vertical method that I showed you, and you would see that. Okay, 12 minus 1, it doesn't matter how you subtract these. I just subtract them and just get an answer. We'll worry about the sign placement in a second. 12 minus 1 is 11. 2 minus 6 is 4. 4 minus 3 is 1. Okay, so I want to make sure I put these in the right order. So if I put it 3 minus 4, would I get a 1? Or would 4 minus 3 give me a positive 1? So I'm reading it like this. 4 minus 3 gives me an answer of positive 1. Okay, so that is what I did. I've now factored that quadratic into two linear functions. And that's really okay. What we've done is we split up the quadratic. Okay? Equals to 0. And set it equal to 0 because that's what it was equal to. Now, technically, how we would solve this is we would say that each one of those is equal to 0. So x plus 4 is equal to 0. X minus 3 is equal to 0. And when you solve that, all you got to do is subtract, basically do the opposite, if you notice. So then your answer is x is equal to negative 4 and x is equal to 3. Or x, or I'll say or a lot, but it can be and or. So all I had to do here was subtract to get that, add, and add. But again, it's mainly just the opposite. From the parentheses, the opposite to get the answer. Okay, another method. Let me show you another method, and as I understand this, because somebody explained this to me very quickly. So here's an example. X squared plus 7x plus 10 is equal to 0. You still do your factors, 1 and 10, 2 and 5. Okay, which of those add up to 7? Well, it's 2 and 5, right? So I'm going to make a Punnett square, and I'm going to write x squared in the first box. I'm going to put 2x and 5x in the next two boxes. And I'm going to put because 2x plus 5x gives me the 7x. Then I'm going to put the 10 in the last box. Now when you look across this first row, what do you see that they both have in common? What do they both have? Well, they both have an x. So I'm taking that out. What is the greatest common factor? What they both have in common? What do the 5 and the 10 both have in common? Well, they're both divisible by 5, positive 5. So that would be a 5 if I took out the 5. Now let's look at the column. X squared and 5x. What do they both have in common? They both have an x. 2x and 10. What do they both have in common? They're both divisible by positive 2. Well, now you have actually created your factors, and I'm trying to explain here what we took out. So this is just showing the steps of what I did here. You do not need to do this right here. Okay? But now you have your factors. You have the x plus 5 in one parentheses, and you have the x plus 2 in the other parentheses. So basically I'm taking this and this as my two factors. Set them equal to 0, solve, x is equal to negative 2, or x equal to negative 5. And that's it. If you like this method a lot, then I'll use this method more often. I honestly, like I said, I have never seen this method till today, so I'm showing you this because a lot of these teachers were like, hey, this is the best method. I can practice with it more and I'll probably grow more comfortable with it, but I will stick to my other method that I've done before, which I've done for way too long. Not that I'm saying anything. All right, so here's another example. X squared plus 2x is equal to 8. Now, the key here is this. Every single time, everything should be on the side of the x squared. So you always want everything on the side of the x squared, and you want your x squared positive. That's another key. So I'm going to move that negative 8 to the other side, or that 8 to the other side. So I'll have x squared plus 2x minus 8. Remember, when you move over like that, it changes signs. Okay, then I'm going to split it up. I'm going to go put x in both parentheses, x and x. And since it's plus minus, according to my chart, it's plus minus. Okay, what are my factors of 8? 1 and 8, 2 and 4. That's it. Because 1 times 8 is 8, 2 times 4 is 8. Nothing, 3 doesn't go into it, and then when I get to 4, which is after 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm repeating. So that's where I can stop. Plus minus means subtract. So I subtract and I get 7 and 2. That means I'm going to put the 4 in one parentheses, the 2 in the other parentheses. I'm going to use these two numbers to put here. Okay? And it makes more sense to say 4 minus 2 gives me an answer of positive 2. If you switch it around, 2 minus 4, you would have negative 2. So this would have had to have been a minus. Okay? Set the parentheses equal to 0. Take the opposites, x is equal to negative 4 or x is equal to 2, and you have your answer. Okay, another example. Okay, again, here I have x squared plus 48 equals 14x. I want everything on the side of the x squared, so I'm going to move the 14x to the other side. Once I do that, I will change its sign and set it equal to 0. Okay, so now I'm going to split them up. Minus minus should be a minus plus should be a minus minus, but I guess I'm doing my factors first. So let's do our factors. Factors of 48. 48 divided by 1 is 48. 48 divided by 2 is 24. 48 divided by 3 is 16. 48 divided by 4 is 12. 48 divided by 5 gives me a decimal answer. Skip it. 48 divided by 6 gives me 8. 48 divided by 7, decimal answer, skip it. 48 divided by 8, I'm already starting to repeat, so these are all my factor pairs. Okay, 6 minus 8 I'm sorry, actually because it's minus plus, according to the chart we should add. So 6 plus 8 is 14, so that's the numbers I'm going to put in my parentheses. Again, minus plus should be minus minus, and I get that, x squared, and again, do the opposites. Negative 6, negative 8 would become positive 6, positive 8. If you graph this equation, this is the zeros you would get on the calculator. So keep that in mind. And again, if you want to check your work, think about this. Negative 6 times negative 8 is positive 48. Negative 6 minus 8 is negative 14. All right, one last example, a little bit of a special case. You're going to get plenty of work on this, guys. Just make sure you do your examples and really work on these so that you fully understand it. What I'm doing here is, you notice here, this one only has two terms. This is not a trinomial. It doesn't have an x squared, an x, and a number. It just has x squared and an x. And this is not one where I could do square roots, because yesterday or before, if it had just been x squared, say plus 7, I could have said, well, take the square root. But this one is saying x squared plus 7x. So I want to keep it like this, and what do they both have in common? Well, they both have an x, so I can take out an x. Factor out an x. Whoops, not the button I meant to hit. Okay, so I want something like this. Then I'm going to set this x and this x plus 7 equal to 0. And then when I do that, the x is still going to stay equal to 0, but the plus 7 will become negative 7, say x is equal to negative 7. So there are my answers, x is equal to 0 or negative 7. This is my introduction to solving by factoring. If you have more questions, feel free to ask. You will see this tomorrow, and then you're going to get some more problems and another set of notes that adds a little bit more complexity to this. So again, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask. Practice, practice, practice is what will make this easier. Thank you very much.